This bad boy has 135,000 miles. It took like an hour trying to get this off. That's crazy. Super crazy. Pretty much the metal part of the disc, so that's actually why it was slipping. But no. What we have here is possibly the highest mileage Type R that I've ever seen. So this Type R is actually a friend of mine's who asked me to replace his clutch because everywhere he took it, they were charging him upwards of $3,000. And I was like, hey man, I can do it for you. Disassembled an RSX, I've, put back together everything. And just to put a clutch on a Type R, I've never done it before, but I'm sure I can do it. I have seen this Type R before. I actually installed a PRL intercooler in it and helped him out with his PRL intake that he was having an issue with. I even installed this carbon fiber hood as well as the carbon fiber fenders for him, which are super, super sweet. I do have a little bit of cracking because he actually drives this for work on the highway and he does a lot of commuting. So with it having 135,000 miles, it just kind of understandable that he drives a whole ton. Again, in this video, what we're going to be doing is installing a clutch on this guy because I did take it on the road and it was slipping in first and second gear when you applied gas. It's even funny, I even installed the Buddy Club steering wheel that he has here. Safe to say, this Type R has seen better days. Could be a little bit cleaner. You got a poop stain right there from those long drives, but enough of joking. Let's get started with this. I've done way too much without recording, but it's actually the next day. I wanted to do this, as slow pace as possible. Nothing in a big rush. But basically, after I took everything from the top here, removing everything that I need to have clearance to the transmission bolts, I went ahead and jacked it up and removed driver's side axle. Just so you can see here, the driver's side axle is pulled out from the transmission, which is all the way back there. The way that I did this was a little bit weird. So I disconnected the brake line, the hard brake line from the mounting bracket, disconnected the mounting bracket, and I also disconnected the active suspension module, little connector piece right there. And then I also removed the caliper, hung it on the side, and then remove the rotor right here. And then what I did to have access to these two bolts at the bottom to give me access to move this hub away, I actually removed the dust shield here. And by removing the little screws, it's about 3 Phillips screws that are holding it to the hub. If you remove that, you can go ahead and slide this to a point where you can take off these big bolts that are right there off, and that way you can remove the hub and have clearance to take off the axle. Alright, so we took out the passenger side CV axle on the hub. Now we have to remove it from the transmission. On the driver's side, as you see here, is just connected into the transmission, so I was able to get a pry bar in there and just pry it out. The passenger side, it has this middle, I believe that's a bearing if I'm not mistaken. It's a middle bearing. All we have to do is really grab a pry bar and pry between here and here to try to take it out, or just get a screwdriver and just hit this until that portion comes out. I'm not gonna lie, I probably took like an hour trying to get this off. My recommendation would be grabbing a pry bar and putting it right here just like that, and then just whacking the end of the pry bar as much as you can until that sucker comes off. An hour and maybe 30 minutes of contemplating life to get it out, but yeah, it's out. And then getting these bolts here so I can take this middle shaft out. All right guys, so made a little bit of progress off screen. There was a lot of bolts I had to remove and connectors I have to remove, and it was limited space, so I couldn't really record. But what I did was, of course, remove those 2 bolts right there on the ball joint, and then I also removed the 2 bolts that are right here on the lower ball joint, and then I also disconnected the sway bar end link, as you see right here on both sides. And then I did also disconnect a little control arm that was attached to the lower control arm right here. Or, yeah, the little, pretty much a control arm or a sway bar kind of thing. I also disconnected the power steering rack, as you see here with the electrical connector. There was one right here, as well as one right here. So you just want to make sure you disconnect those two. I was trying to get past a kind of an overpipe that was sitting between subframe and the car itself. This is the overpipe right here. You're gonna have to remove the 3 bolts that are attached to the header or the cat, and then you're also gonna have to remove the 3 bolts that are going to the mid pipe. But once you do that, you're gonna have a couple bolts that you want to undo. So there's gonna be kind of like a tie brace right here. You're gonna remove those 2 bolts right there. You're gonna want to remove a bracket that's right here. There's gonna be a big long bolt here, as well as this little bolt here. Remove the bolt that is kind of on this little control arm bushing. And then you have one of the main mounting bolts that are right here to directly to the chassis. And then you have bolts right here in the front of the chassis. So, of course, that's going to be on both sides. But once you drop them, of course, you're going to want to use a jack to lower it for you. And before you drop the transmission, you want to disconnect your transmission cooler lines that are right here. But before you do that, you want to go ahead and drain the transmission. There's going to be a bolt right here that's going to hold the transmission fluid. So I went ahead and dropped the transmission. As you see, drained all the fluid, took off all the bolts on the transmission side, and then used this jack right here with a piece of wood, put it underneath and kind of like shimmy it to the side to get it off, because you got that little pilot bearing area right there you got to shift off. So if you shift that off and then lower it, it should come off. Go ahead and remove that old flywheel and clutch, and remove that old throwout bearing. So yep, as you see here on the old clutch, it has a lot of hot spots on the flywheel. And then on the pressure plate, if we look at it, it has tons of hot spots there too. So safe to say that has been driven spiritedly in the 100+ miles that it has. And then if we look at the actual clutch disc, that is totally toast. You see the inner wheel, or the inner part of it is actually getting to pretty much the metal part of the disc. So that's actually why it was slipping. We have the new clutch right there. It's actually from X Clutch. This was actually recommended from Moto IQ. A lot of their videos are great and very informative. So when they recommended X Clutch for daily driving and, just have that comfortability. And then I do notice that pressure plate is a little bit different. This one kind of goes somewhat in, and this one actually sticks out. So I'm very interested to see how that affects the clutch feel. If this one's going to feel heavier than stock, or if this one's going to feel, close to stock. This one's actually the stage 1. So it's kind of like an OEM plus replacement. But again, we're going to be installing this guy and following the instructions from X Clutch. Okay, and one tip to tighten down the flywheel bolts is to grab a wrench and put a transmission bolt in, and grab one of the pressure plate bolts and put it in right there at the end of the wrench. And that way, when you're spinning it, this is gonna give it tension, so that way these are the flywheel is not going to move on you. All right, so to tighten your pressure plate bolts, all you want to do is put a transmission bolt right into this little mounting piece, and then you can go ahead and grab your wrench again, put it through there, and then put it into one of the teeth right here. And that way, when you're turning it, it's going to apply pressure so that you can tighten down your your pressure plate bolts. Check out how much clutch material is on this clutch fork. That's crazy, super crazy. So I didn't want to bore you guys with the reinstall of everything that I took out, just because it's pretty much the reverse order of how to take it out. So I put back the transmission, I put all the connections, make sure every sensor that I disconnected was connected, and make sure all the hoses were good. And then I put about 2.5 quarts of transmission fluid into the transmission, because again, we drained it, so we had to refill it. As you see, we are all finished up. Everything's put back together. It is still absolutely dirty. I'm not going to be taking care of that for my friend Jesus, just because I just finished it, and this project actually took me about 4 days to really finish up. But it's really fulfilling to be able to do this for friends. Even though I haven't done this exact car before, I had the basic knowledge of how to take a transmission out, how to change a clutch and things like that. This guy is all finished up. We're going to be taking it on a quick test drive, kind of feel the clutch out, make sure everything is working and there's no weird sounds. that animation is super cool. The one thing I find super cool about these Type Rs is the auto rev downshift. So, you know, when you're driving and you want to go to lower gear, you can always just put it in that gear and it's going to automatically split the throttle for you, which I find super cool. Like, that's one of the coolest things that, you know, Civic didn't have or doesn't have. So we're all good. So, you know, the clutch feel, I would say it is really close to stock. I didn't really notice that much of a change. It's in that same area of like kind of that middle way point, and the engagements felt real crisp, real good. No problems. Everything is good.